So, you join us for round 7 of the 2018 FFeM Championship, coming to you from the street circuit of Adelaide. It's been an interesting championship so far, with different drivers taking the helm in some races. We'll get onto some of those results in a moment, but for the moment, we're waiting the red light to come on. There goes the red light. They're waiting for the green light. Stroll on pole. Long hold before the green light goes on, and as the cars accelerate away, Lance Stroll's made a very good start. Gasly's made a good start from third on the grid as he moves up into second ahead of Felix Rosenqvist. Jean-Eric Vergne moving to fourth, staying in fourth rather, as all cars appear to have got through the centre chicane safely. And Stroll accelerating up to Wakefield Bend, turn number 4 in the team hot point. And he's got the Gum Racing of Pierre Gasly close behind him in second place. Gasly looking good in this first lap for the moment. And for that moment as well, Rosenqvist down to third, Jean-Eric Vergne fourth, Sam Bird fifth, Kamui Kobayashi has moved up from 7th to 6th ahead of Sebastian Buemi, and Stoffel Van Dorn in 8th place for the Bowser Oil Monolith Racing System team, the Liechtensteiner team. Through Brewery Bend goes Stroll and Pierre Gasly looking at the slipstream. Jean-Eric Vergne was looking at Felix Rosenqvist for third place down the straight and trying to get up alongside, but Rosenqvist has got some good top speed. Wonder how much extra power he's running in that Monolith car. Sam Bird maintaining fifth. There's a big dive bomb from one of the Willows, forcing Luca Giotto onto the curb. It was Cooper Lee. And speaking of Cooper Lee, who is maintaining 10th position at the moment, but that was a massive dive bomb from the Australian. Might have gained a few positions out of that actually. He started 13th on the grid and he's moved up to 10th place. Having won last time out at Curitiba, for the Curitiba ePrix in Brazil. But it's Pierre Gasly who's the fastest on the circuit, looking for a victory. He's had one podium this season already, and that came at the Mexico City ePrix, the round before Curitiba. Stroll leading at the moment as he goes through Flinders Bend onto the small straight before the hooked S's. A fast left and a fast right. Don't run too wide because you'll be in the wall probably. Through Stag Bend onto the Jones Straight. Another short straight before a little flick left, almost Scandinavian-esque, into the right of Brewery, and Rosenqvist defending very heavily from Sam Bird through Brewery and successfully defending. Now Bird's coming under pressure from Kamui Kobayashi down the Brabham Straight, also known as Dequetteville Terrace. And look at this queue of cars. What on earth is going to happen to the Dequetteville hairpin? Kobayashi up to 5th place at the moment, but Stoffel Van Dorn's making good advances and is up to 5th place from 8th at one point. So the tremendous move from the Belgian driver, former Willows driver, now a Monolith FFeM driver. And at the back there was Nick Cassidy in 13th place. And is that a gain or loss? He's gained 2 places from the start. Now it's Stroll setting the fastest lap of the race. So the hot point looking pretty quick at this stage. Stroll on pole. And there was another fastest lap actually. Was that Stoffel Van Dorn setting fastest lap, or was that just confirmation of Lance Stroll's fastest lap? Anyway, Di Grassi, excuse me, making light contact with Nick Cassidy going into the Senna S. Di Grassi having a bit of a checkered season so far. He dominated the Singapore Special, which was race 4 of this 14 race calendar, but other than that he's only had one 4th place, which came at Curitiba, and 2 of the pole positions being his only other points. Grassi's not had the best of seasons, but yet he still sits 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. And of course, Di Grassi is the reigning champion, having won it in 2017. And his team Alpine Racing, the Australian team, conglomerates run by Mitchell. They won the team's championship last season, and this season they are 5th. Partly thanks to Di Grassi's inconsistent season. And Stoffel Van Dorn is up to 4th place. So the Belgian really on the move and could be a contender for the win depending on how quick he is at catching Pierre Gasly, who's now dropped to 3rd behind Jean-Eric Vergne. That overtake was happening as I was discussing the Brazilian Lucas di Grassi. So I should really have been paying more attention. Now on board with Kamui Kobayashi, challenging Rosenquist. 5th place into the Senna S. Is Rosenquist going to defend? Well, he held the middle ground and he's defending that position pretty well. But been a bit of a roadblock for Rosenquist, who won the opening race of the season at Macau. That was the race 1 that took place at Macau out of 2. Do a quick recap while I'm at that. So, first race from Macau, won by Rosenquist, with 2nd place going to Sam Bird, 3rd going to Sebastian Buemi. Race 2, which saw a spectacular accident involving Benjamin Pryor, who shot off, I think it was Cooper Lee, going into the pits. I think Pryor was on the inside with the pit entrance on the outside. Oh, that's going to be nasty. 2 cars, Kobayashi and Rosenquist. And Rosenquist and Kobayashi losing out extremely heavily from all of that. There's a big queue. There's a big gap behind, actually. Oh, there's contact further back. I just about saw that. I think it involved one of the electric eels. It was either that or Nick Cassidy, and contact again between Luca Piotto and Kamui Kobayashi. Kobayashi trying to regain some lost ground, and he in fact lost the position to Seigenjo. And the other Albine around the outside racecourse of Kamui Kobayashi goes the Chinese driver. But he's now into the point. Grassi, nowhere to be seen. I wonder if somebody's creating a roadblock further behind. But there's Rosenquist being overtaken by what looks like Cooper Lee. So, here's a replay of what happens. Coming out of Jones. Now we're about to see what the contact at Brewery between was Casper having a lock-up going into Stag, and Robin Frines having a look at the Kiwi going into Brewery, but Cassidy defending very hard. And Grassi trying to take advantage of that round the outside. Gets driven into a little bit by Robin Frines, and both lost a lot of ground as a result. So not a good race for Lucas di Grassi. I think he's having one of his off days this season. Only had 2 on days. Yeah, let's see for his sake if we can get that back together as Brendan Hartley. There's a slight lock up into the Senna S. I think it was Seigenjo. As you see Nick Cassidy, Nick De Vries, the 2 Nicks, and 14-15, Benjamin Pryor, the one who caused that massive sprint at the second race at Macau, but was won by Nick De Vries in the team hot point. Second in that race was Lance Gossett, the hot point 1-2, and part of the reason for that would have been higher engine, or higher powertrain modes, shall we say. And there's got an early pitter. It looks like Jean-Eric Verne about to make a very, very early pit stop. 2 mandatory pit stops in each FFeM race. And the window begins at lap 5 and ends with 5 laps to go. But you can make 2 pit stops at any point in between those laps. If you don't, then you'll get penalised 30 seconds, as I believe Sebastian Buemi did in Singapore. Only made the 1 pit stop, and as a result got penalised. Now, if you make your pit stop too early, you can rejoin in the thick of traffic, which may hinder your strategy, but at least with this, you'll get your pit stops done out of the way very early. So I think the further back you are, it's worth making the early pit stop, but the further forward you are, you'll rejoin in some very heavy traffic. But worked out pretty well for Jean-Eric Verne so far. He is in 6th place, ahead of Luca Piotto. A little bit of clear track in front of him, with Da Costa, the next driver, in his spot. He'll have fresher tyres. Now let's see what he can do. The target will be to try and undercut Lance Stroll for the race lead. As the Grassi defends from De Vries. Kamui Kobayashi also pitting. That is a good decision from himself in the thrust and bust. Robin Frines as well. So they're at the back, but on their fresher tyres they can charge, they can push hard on this middle set of tyres to try and gain some track position over some of the other runners. No plans for Stroll to make a pit stop yet, neither Pierre Gasly. They're in 1st and 2nd, Stoffel Van Dorn also not planning to pit, neither's Bird, Da Costa, Verne, who has pitted, already catching up to Antonio Felix Da Costa. 3rd in the Macau race 2, by the way, was Stoffel Van Dorn. and Van Dorn currently runs in that third place. So, Dubai was next on the calendar, which was run by Cooper Lee, ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn, who had started in pole position, and Lance Stroll finished in third, which was a very good drive. He had started, I think it was 15th on the grid for that particular race. A good effort from the Canadian. And Singapore was next, which was dominated by Lucas de Grassi. Second was Sam Bird. Third was Nick de Vries. Mexico City next, which was Jean-Eric Verne's victory ahead of the senior Piquet, Little Nelson, and Pierre Gasly was third. So it was actually Gajira E1-2 in that race. In the most recent race, this one, equally dominated from pole position, won by 40 odd seconds, which at Curitiba is 2/3 of a lap. So very spectacular performance from the Australian former Mitchell driver. In that race was Sebastian Buemi, and third was Henrik Vernon. Vernon good contention to win this race if he can clear the Costa pretty quickly. There are a couple of trouble spots on the circuit. This is one of them, Brewery Bend, in the long straight, and being in past FF1M races, just how difficult it is to overtake once the front drive defends. And Verne looking at Da Costa for 5th place. I think this is going to be the overtake. Da Costa not defending that, I think probably sensibly, because he's in a different race to Jean-Eric Verne. Up to 5th, strategy working out quite nicely for Verne. He made a bit of a mess of his strategy, I think, at Dubai. Made his 2 pit stops way too late and finished out of the points. Now, what have we got here? Jack Aitken looking at the other. Is that Nelson Piquet or is that a Danish Electric? I think it's a Danish Electric. But it's Piquet, which is the Gajera E teammate of Jean-Eric Verne. It's just set the fastest lap of the race, looking good for the 2-time FF1M winner. So through the fast right pink pit entrance there into Mistral hairpin. It's the start-finish straight. We're in the middle of a horse racing course. Circuit akin to Aintree. As you see Kobayashi having a look at Benjamin Pryor into the Planet S and nearly spinning, catching a tank slapper, but making the overtake successfully work. It's a position gained for the Japanese driver in the Tuscan bus, the conglomerate of taking there. It's not just FFeM that's taking place this weekend, it's the FF4M Australia Championship. And in the race just gone, which would be race number 5 of the season, Lando Norris, who started from pole position, bottled it once again. He had a crash somewhere and finished way down in 20th. That particular race was won by Kay Piper from the Java Sport entered team, Philip Woolas in 2nd and Marco Parnelli 3rd, with Jesse Lambrick 4th, Bernard Brabham 5th, and then the rest of them, Colton Herter, Daniel Collins and Dion Slater completing the points. Seeing a hot point, making a move on the monolith. That must be Nick de Vries taking Felix Rosenqvist for 11th place. So Nick de Vries going pretty well, and it makes me wonder if Hotpoint is running a bit more engine modes compared to the previous meetings. I can go through some of the engine modes in a moment. If Hotpoint are running higher modes, then it's working out pretty well for them. But they have used quite a bit of their allocation. After this race, that will be the halfway point of the season. Before this race entered, in order, Alpine have used 70 out of the 200 kilowatts of extra power available before this race. Danish Electric have used 90, as have Ibargum Racing. Electric have used 12 so far, which doesn't reflect pretty well in the team's championship, as they are down in 9th place. And there's some defending going on here. Is that Verne versus Bird going through the Dequetteville hairpin? I think it is. The battle for 4th place. Now, this is where the strategy can come undone for Jean-Eric Verne, but no collisions so far, and was the quickest driver on the circuit. He was only 15 seconds behind Lance Stroll. As Bird locks up going into Mistral, is that going to give Verne an opportunity at the corner exit? Some traction. But look behind, Felix da Costa making a move back at Jean-Eric Verne. Now this is going to cost Verne dearly, and da Costa moving up to 5th place. So this is where hitting early has its downsides because Verne lost 3 seconds on that lap to Lance Stroll. Stroll can make a pit stop and rejoin fairly close to Jean-Eric Verne. Exactly no. The electric wheel have used 120 out of the 200 kilowatt allocation for the whole season. Galaxy have used 100. Jira E have used 70. Hotpoint have used 100. Monolith have used the most. There's yellow flags at the Senna S. Is that Cassidy off? I think Cassidy's being craned away, so he's been involved in an incident. You can see Nick De Vries coming out of the pits. But what happened to Nick Cassidy? There's an incident, it looks like, with Brendan Hartley, it seems. Hartley having a look at the inside into the Senna S, and Cassidy holding the middle. And, oh dearie me, that was a big one. And the the Galaxy getting involved in sympathy. It's Kamui Kobayashi. So Kobayashi and Cassidy out of the race after a fairly hefty collision. So it's Kobayashi, not Brendan Hartley. And yeah, I think Kobayashi trying to repeat his move that he did on Benjamin Pryor, but not managing to make that succeed this time as he made contact with the Kiwi Nick Cassidy. And was that the Galaxy confirmed out of the race as well? That's Cassidy confirmed as out of the race. And Kobayashi definitely out of the race as he got craned away. I think Gasly's into the pit. Gasly into the pit on second. And Jack Aitken was the Galaxy that we saw getting involved just for the heck of it. And so far still in the race, but he's stuck, so he may as well be out of the race. Should expect to see a marshal come up to push him away. Where does Gasly rejoin? I think he rejoined ahead of Luca Giotto and in a lovely bit of clear track. They're looking good for Gasly's race, even if his teammate is spectacularly out of the race. Genjo looking at Luca Giotto for 7th place. And we have nearly gone through all of the modes used so far. So Monolith have used the most with 130 out of the 200 kilowatt allocation. We used mode 4 at the first race of Macau, which helped the Rosenquist win the race. The only other team to have used a mode 4 this season have been Ebargo, and that was race 2 at Macau. And that certainly helped Gasly and Cassidy because both of those were in the points. Jean-Eric Verne up to 3rd place. He's got past Acosta and Bird on this lap. So Verne making some amends, which he needs to do because Lance Stroll is in the pits for his first of 2 mandatory pit stops. Pretty much at 1/3 distance at the end of lap 11, or is that the end of lap 12? Certainly at 1/3 distance anyway, as he exits the pit box in 6.5 seconds. And Jack Aitken building sandcastles. And Jean-Eric Verne has just about jumped Stroll, but Stroll has got fresher tyres, so now he can go on the attack of Jean-Eric Verne. At the moment, it is Stoffel van Dorn who leads the race, but having yet to make one of his 2 stops. Verne 2nd, having stopped, as has Stroll. Bird 4th and Da Costa 5th. Those two are pretty close together, so Da Costa looking to challenge Sam Bird for 4th place. Temporarily 4th place because Pierre Gasly in 6th place has stopped once. Genjo has taken Luca Giotto somewhere in 7th place. It's good to see Galaxy in the points because they are currently sitting last in the championship on just the 1 point. 1 point scored at Macau race 1. Was that courtesy of Giotto? I think it was not. It was Aitken who scored that 1 point. And Custom Bust have used 70 kilowatts of their 200 allocation before this race, and Willows E have used 80 kilowatts. And that puts them in very good shape for the championship because before this race they have 120 to use, and they split 2nd in the team's championship. Cooper Lee leads the Drivers' Championship by a fairly healthy 9 points on the Nick De Vries. Cooper Lee is the only driver to have won multiple races this season with 2. The race winners, Nick De Vries, with Nebraska, Jean-Eric Verne, and Felix Rosenquist. Stroll on his outlap He is 1.7 seconds behind Jean-Eric Verne, second placed Jean-Eric Verne, and Gasly is some 6.7 seconds behind Lance Stroll. Gasly has got 2 cars in between himself and the Canadian. This is Sebastian Buemi we're looking at, and we're on board with as he goes through East Terrace, short straight, short squirt before Flinders Street Bend. And then end of the first sector into the hook misses. Remember who has crashed or smacked turn over the field? Carl Vendlinger did in the 1993 championship deciding FFeM race, or dramatic FFeM race, I must say, because it was the driver in spin in the championship who went on to win the championship, and that was Alex Zanardi. Alongside, that's Buemi having a look at Giotto into Decatville. A tight hairpin which poses the best place to overtake. Down to the racecourse sequence. Left pink, followed by a trickier left. And Gasly pitting again, so he's getting his second pit stop out of the way very, very early. Interesting strategy from the E-Bar Gum driver. So, Gasly going very alternative. Let's see how this works out. As 6 seconds pit stop. And he's going to rejoin behind Brendan Hartley. That's 10th place for Pierre Gasly. And Stroll is catching Verne. He's put half a second out of the Frenchman on that lap. Frenchman who won 2 races in the 2013 season. Making them at the 2 ultra-low downforce circuits of Hockenheim and Monza. Both are catching Stoffel Van Dorn very quickly, so Stoffel Van Dorn is going to play the long game for this race. Looking to make his 2 pit stops later than most. So at this rate he'll rejoin between De Costa and Degenjo. Sebastian Buemi has another look at Luca Giotto, but I think there you can see that the Galaxy is running higher powertrain modes compared to the Danish electric team, because Buemi can't get anywhere near an overtake. And you'll no doubt be getting very frustrated, but Luca Giotto is coming into the pits. And Sam Bird also coming into the pits, so that is one less driver for De Costa to worry about, because De Costa moving up to 4th place anyhow. So where will Bird rejoin? He's just rejoining in just about 6th place, ahead of the other one of Sebastian Buemi. That's his teammate. Bird should be pulling away a little bit. Now, Buemi is free from the train Luca Giotto, the Giotto Express. As Benjamin Pryor comes into the pit from what was 13th place at that time, but could have been 12th, down to 14th. The Welshman who was test driver for FJR for a long, long time. At least 3 seasons. Possibly a 4th one. Was he test driver during 2018? It could have been. Gasly having a look at Brendan Hartley, and we'll see the difference in powertrain settings between the thrust and boost and the E-Bar Gum. It looks like the thrust and boost now running higher powertrain mode, so Gasly's task is going to be made a bit more difficult, because he needs to clear that thrust and boost of Hartley. Stroll comes into the pits once again, so Stroll looking to try and undercut Jean-Eric Verne for the race lead. The race lead, who rejoins in some nice clear track. So Team Hotpoint going for this similar strategy to Gasly, but work out pretty well for the Canadian. As we look at Sam Bird challenging Segenjo for 5th place. And these two have cleared Sebastian Buemi. Bird is going to pit almost immediately after making his first lap. He's going to get his 2 pit stops away in very quick order. And look in the background, Philip Rosenquist is coming into the pits. And he's way down the order, fortunately, certainly compared to Stoffel Van Dorn, who leads, but yet to make any of his 2 pit stops. The brewery goes Bird and in front of him, Stegenjo. And let's see the difference in powertrain settings. It looks fairly even. Just about there is the Alpine starting to pull away. He's going to be braving the brakes, and Bird is not that. And Van Dorn versus Vern, contact between the two, and fortunately for both, neither spin. But this is going to almost certainly lose Jean-Eric Verne the race lead if he's going to get stuck behind tired in terms of his rubber, Stoffel Van Dorn. Worth mentioning, Da Costa has not made either of his pit stops yet, so we'll be quick in the closing stages. Anyone who's yet to pit, they'll be quick later on. Bird into the pits. And in 5.5 seconds, he's on his final set of tyres. And rejoins ahead of the Galaxy. Jack Aitken's back in the race now. However many laps of lift. He could well be 5 laps down. 5 laps down exactly. So, if he finishes lap 29, I don't think he'll be classified. That's, yeah, you have to complete 90% race distance in order to be classified. And still, Gasly is stuck behind Brendan Hartley. This is killing his race. This is killing Gasly's race. There's Hartley due in the pits. Well, Verne has overtaken Van Dorn. Van Dorn is off, and is he an issue? I think, is that mechanical? It is mechanical. We have a drivetrain problem for Stoffel Van Dorn. That is unfortunate. And you can see him trudging to a halt at the exit of Mistral. So, what's the gap now? Jean-Eric Verne is 11.8 seconds ahead of Da Costa. Stroll is only half a second off. And to get past the Portuguese driver, so Verne will lose the lead to Stroll once he pits, but he needs Da Costa to stay out for as long as possible. Brendan Hartley's in the pit. Gasly has been released. That'll help his race. But now he's got Sam Bird 1.8 seconds behind and on slightly fresher tyres. But based on Sebastian Buemi, Danish Electric might not have the power to overtake the E-bar gum of Pierre Gasly. And we don't know what engine modes each team is running until the race results are released. For example, in the previous meeting at Curitiba, 2 teams weren't running higher power at all. Let's have a look at Stroll. He's going to overtake the Willows E of Da Costa into the Ketteville and move in second. So, now, Stroll can push now. And Jean-Eric Verne has to respond at some point. He's not planning on pitting at the end of lap 19, that's for sure. There'll be another lap as Rosenquist exits the pits and goes a lap down. Again, Joe is going to come into the pits, though, at the end of his 18th lap. Look at tight on the right, because there's the pit lane entrance. And into the pit lane goes Seguenjo. First in the pit box, because Alpine are the team's champions. Finally makes one of his first pit stops, and is that rejoining behind Bird or Buemi? I think it's Buemi. Bird, the fastest lap of the race, is 3/10 behind Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly introduces mirrors and what does. Now, let's probably stay on board with Sam Bird until the end of the Ketteville, because it'll be interesting to see if Bird can overtake the E-bar gun, who may well be running higher powertrain modes. Extra power. They may not be. We'll find out in a few seconds' time, as just in front, was that Buemi versus Da Costa going into Brewery? Well, Gasly is keeping check, taking a bit of a middle ground going into Brewery. Now he's in a little bit of trouble. And it looks like there's enough power in that Danish Electric for Bird to outbrake Gasly into the Ketteville. Indeed it is. So Not much power difference between those two, that's for sure. It could be that ePrix are not running much in the way of extra power, or are very similar compared to Danish Electric, because it looks like the top speed did plateau a little bit between the two towards the end of the straight. They could both be running Mode 0 or Mode 1 or Mode 2. We look at Da Costa, who is all over the back of Buemi, but Da Costa is going to hit at the end of this particular lap. He's going to get his second pit stop out of the way. He's going to be caught by Bird before the end of the lap. At the moment, he's behind Sebastian Buemi. The senior Pete comes into the pit. Is Jean-Eric Verne going to come into the pits at the end of this lap? Not this lap, he's going to save it for another lap. We do usually get very high tyre wear at this particular circuit. We see it quite a lot in FF1M. As is that going to look up the inside into Brewery? Who was thinking about it was the Costa. And here comes Bird, but here comes Gasly as well. This could get delicious going into Duquetteville. But it's Bird up the inside of Da Costa. He's not far alongside enough, and is Gasly going to look round the outside? No, he isn't. He's going to wait there. Gasly does need the point. Gum desperately do need some points. And into the pit lane comes Da Costa for his second stop. That's going to set Bird free to some extent. I don't think Buemi's made any of his pit stops yet. Again, Joe back into the pits. And there's Cooper Lee. Moving up into 7 for the moment, but has yet to make his second stop. Yeah, Buemi hasn't made any of his pit stops yet, so he's in a bit of trouble if he wants to score any points. Currently stuck on 16 points, 8 in the Drivers' Championship. 3 behind Lance Stroll, 3 ahead of Felix Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist not looking like he's going to score any points at all. Lance Stroll looking good for a victory, because Jean-Eric Verne is still out there. Still not pitting at the end of lap 21. As he starts lap 22, still no plans to pit. Stroll has got a lapped Rosenqvist in front of him. Stroll is just eating into that gap of the Gujira E. Now 8.5 seconds. Rosenqvist will push off the accelerator and let Lance Stroll through at that front. He's looking at the inside of East Terrace, and Rosenqvist notices now and lets him through going into Flinders Street. But into the Flinders corner because they were on Flinders Street before turning into that road. Cooper Lee makes his second pit stop. Being outside if things goes his way. And at the end of lap 22, Buemi finally looking like he's going to make his first pit stop. He's got another one to make after this. That'll drop him quite a way down the order. At the moment, Bird is stuck behind his own teammate. And that is allowing Gasly and Giotto to close up. Does Giotto have another pit stop to make, I wonder? He may do. Yes, he does. Giotto does have another pit stop to make, so Gasly's 5th position, soon to become 4th, should be fairly safe. But he's having to keep watch. And his tyres will be very, very knackered. Because he was the very first driver to make 2 pit stops. The strategy doesn't really look as if it's paid off. Here comes Bird up into 3rd. And Giotto taking Gasly. But Giotto does have another pit stop to make. Grassi has not made any pit stops either. So he's in a bit of trouble. As he is defending from his own teammate, Genjo, into Duquetteville. So it is definitely an off day for Lucas Di Grassi. And there's confirmation of Grassi and Buemi coming into the pit. Di Grassi will follow. Behind, that's Genjo, who will move up into 8th place as Da Costa sets the fastest lap. That's Cooper Lee that is behind Sergenjo. Da Costa flying on his new set of tyres. That could be an outside shot of 4th place at the end of the race if he is up Gasly at the rate of knots. Still, Jean-Eric Vergne hasn't made his second pit stop. So, maybe his strategy could come good at the end of the race. He's comfortably ahead of Sam Bird, but he's basically guaranteed a second. It looks as if Team Hot Points have played the strategy perfectly, but we've still got 10 laps to go. As Cooper Lee chases Payne. It's in Sergenjo for 8th. Buemi, meanwhile, there he goes, and he rejoined in 7th place. That's Lee optimistically looking at Sergenjo into Brewery. Nick DeVries has moved up into 10th place, having made his... He's got Benjamin Pryor lurking up and having a go down Duquetteville Straight, or Brabham Straight. Take your pick, get into Duquetteville hairpin, and DeVries stays ahead for the moment. And then starting yet another lap before making a pit stop. And Gasly's a bit stuck behind Giotta, but Giotta is coming into the pits at the end of this lap. Da Costa is only 3 seconds behind Gasly, so very realistic shot of 4th place from the end of the race for Da Costa. Lost a lot of coffee, Billy Big Bollocks. Again, take your pick. Tony Coast, that's another one. As we look at Vergne, finally making the pit stop. As mentioned, basically guaranteed second, but if he has a chance of victory, he's got to push pretty hard. As mentioned, tyre wear is pretty severe around the streets of Adelaide. They bring soft compounds to this meeting, just so the tyres can actually grip. That's an excellent pit stop for the Gajera E Atomic Pulse team, 4.9 seconds. How far off the goal is Vergne? He's got some nice clear track, and there's been an incident at Duquetteville. And oh, Sam Bird! Sam Bird has crashed or had a mechanical problem. Now this is coming out of Duquetteville into racecourse. You can see, turning in, understeer, smash into the wall. That is a costly mistake from Sam Bird, and a guaranteed podium out of the window. That's going to move Pierre Gasly up into 3rd once Luca Giotta makes his second pit stop. But Da Costa is on a charge. And there's Jack Aitken. Should gain that position, that 16th place off of Sam Bird come the end of the race. And yeah, Gasly right behind Antonio Felix Da Costa. And Bird's accident, that is basically what Lando Norris did in the FFeM race. Norris only lost his front wing, but was able to come into the pits, but finished way down in the 20th. Like Bird, like Lando. Yes. As we look at Cooper Lee chasing Sergenjo. As Da Costa, the other Willows, chases Pierre Gasly for 3rd place. And this is his best opportunity, and Willows are pretty quick in a straight line in this race, as this should be easy meet for Da Costa. And there you can see, halfway down the straight, Da Costa moves up into 3rd place. Gasly surrendering that one fairly sensibly, I think. His tyres are pretty old. So theoretically it should be a simple run for Da Costa and Gasly to 3rd and 4th, unless those behind, such as Lee, can make inroads into Gasly's 4th place. So Vergne is 9.4 seconds behind Lance Stroll as they start their 26th laps. Jack Aitken finally coming into the pit and removing himself. It is followed by Benjamin Pryor. So Pryor making his second pit stop, as Stroll puts a lap on the other electric eel of Robin Frines. Di Grassi Finally waking up, takes a position off of Felix Rosenquist as Jean-Eric Verne looks to put a lap on the pair of them. Drivers being lapped in this race. Quite a few were lapped at Curitiba due to the short lap length. And there's Verne putting the lap on Rosenquist. 9.5 seconds was the gap at the second set point, which sits somewhere along the Duquetteville Straight. It's 9.6 as they cross the. It's 9.5 as they cross the start-finish line. The graphic was a little bit late in updating. With the Senate S on Wakefield Street into Wakefield Bend goes Jean-Eric Verne. He now looks to put that lap on Lucas Di Grassi. Cost just still hold the fastest lap at the moment, but now with some clear track, or relatively clear track, Jean-Eric Verne should be able to pump in a good lap time as he faces after Lance Stroll. Da Costa on a 1:23.922 is the fastest driver out on circuit. Not the fastest with the fastest lap, but Jean-Eric Verne is on a flyer. 3/10 quicker in the first sector. How's he doing in the second sector? We'll find out soon. In fact, the second sector point, for some reason, is on the start-finish straight, so we're waiting quite a while. Don't think the modders have got that one quite right. Di Grassi looking to make a move on Benjamin Pryor, who smokes his front tyres, going into the Mistral hairpin, or is that Robin Frines? It's one of the two eels anyway. And a new fastest lap for Jean-Eric Verne. Got the inside into Senna S was Di Grassi, and oh dearie me, contact and Verne getting slightly delayed by that. This will certainly help Stroll. Verne actually took 2.5 seconds out of Stroll on that lap. He will have lost a little bit of that due to the collision between Di Grassi and the eel. And it's Robin Frines, not Benjamin Pryor. Frines going to come into the win with this lap. So the latest of the drivers to make their second pit stops is Sebastian Buemi has done now. Very likely we'll be seeing Sebastian Buemi setting a new fastest lap. Out of the pits in 5 seconds. He's going to drop behind. Is it Giotto coming up? I think it is. Luca Giotto into 7th place. That pit stop of Buemi's moves Gasly up into 4th place. Buemi, that's interesting. So I think Buemi, that was probably where the timing line was. It moves Cooper Lee up into 5th place. Genjo up into 6th. I think Lee has overtaken Genjo somewhere. So now we've got both Willows in the top 5, to cost the 3rd, and Lee in 5th. 1 hot point, 1 Jira. Aitken exiting the pits. Now we've got 1 Ebar Gum. We have got 1 Alpine, 1 Galaxy, and 1 Danish electric team. Then lost 1.2 seconds basically, and thanks to Di Grassi and Frines' collision. Frines finally entering the pits on his 28th lap. You could say that he was out of the pit window, but it's on the driver's pit window rather than the window that the leader is on. So Frines not at risk of a penalty. Now what's the gap between Gasly and Lee? Because Gasly's tyres are getting very, very old now. It is 8.4 seconds, so that's one to keep an eye out on. If Willow's 2000 top 4, that could move them. That will move them ahead. Should move them ahead of Team Point in the team's championship. They are only 1 point behind the American registered team, because that's where Team Hotpoint are from, but they are a conglomerate of CBA racing. 12 points for a win, but Stroll has an extra 2 points because he started from pole position, so that would move Hotpoint up to 58. Costa 3rd, Lee 5th at 10 points. Hotpoint would actually extend their lead in the team's championship. if it stays like this, but no doubt Jean-Eric Vergne is going to try and do something about it. Sébastien Buemi sits in 8th place, so his strategy hasn't worked out terribly. Quite late for the top. And he's looking at Luca Giotto for 7th place. Big Ninja for 6th come the end of the race. The Chinese driver's not far in front. Lee is a lot quicker than Pierre Gasly. Lee could be on for a 4th place if he, in the final 4 laps. They have basically 3 seconds that Lee took out of Gasly on that lap. And Gasly in a little bit of trouble now with his tyres. He needs Big Ninja to hold Giotto and Buemi up. And Danish Electric do not look to be running that high engine. Call them engines. I'm used to petrol. Not used to electric stuff. It's the powertrain. But Danish Electric not seemingly running that much in the way of extra power. Vergne took 3 seconds out of Lance Stroll on that lap. This battle for the win is not over yet. And this battle for 7th place is going to go on for a little bit down to Ketteville. You can see the Galaxy pulling away on the straight. It's going to be difficult for Sébastien Buemi to take that 7th place off of Luca Giotto. And that's Pierre Gasly holding up an electric eel. Maybe that could have knocked us some of the time loss, but there you can see Vergne closing up extremely quickly to Lance Stroll now. So we are going to get a showdown in the final few laps. Argajira E running higher power settings. Now Hotpoint running higher power settings as well. And Lee is now 1.3 seconds behind Pierre Gasly. So Lee looks as if he's going to take Pierre Gasly to 4th place on this lap, probably. A bit further back, there's Gasly with an eel in between the two. But the eel is going to get out of the way going through Hut Bend. Won't make it easy for Lee. Still not that easy for Lee. That gives Gasly a little bit of breathing space on this lap, but you feel it's inevitable that Gasly's going to lose 4th place. Now the gap between Stroll and Vergne, 1.6 seconds. As the gap halved, you can see Vergne visibly quicker through the Senna S. Now is Lee close enough to Gasly going through onto Ketteville? Waiting for quite a while before Da Costa comes through for 3rd place. And if Vergne takes Stroll, then that's going to change the championship standings a little bit. Because that will then drop Stroll from 14 to 10 points. And with Da Costa 3rd and Lee probably going to move it to 4th. That's 11 points for Willows. They will both be tied at point in Willows, but Willows would move in front and count. Let's be down to Ketteville. Let's see the extra power settings. It's fairly even. Vergne just about getting alongside. Can he do it on the brakes into Ketteville, or is Stroll going to hang on around the outside? Stroll is going to hang on around the outside. That could be very, very significant. There is Gasly and Lee. This is on the penultimate lap. And just coming into shot here, just about, there is Sergenjo and Giotto. Still has Sébastien Buemi behind, and that is a legacy of Danish Electric not running as high power setting compared to Galaxy. Ooh, Vergne, that was versus Stroll. Stroll spins right in front of Vergne. Stroll has choked it. And Jean-Eric Vergne moves into the lead of the race on the final lap. Well, can he get back on? I think he's safe in 2nd, but look at this. Vergne takes a late one up the inside. Stroll reacts and clunks the curb and spins right into the path of Jean-Eric Vergne. So Vergne takes the lead of the race. Stroll down to 2nd. Ow, on the final lap as well. Stroll rejoining. And Gasly's still ahead of Lee. Lee must have made a mistake at some point, or chosen the wrong place to try and make an overtake on Gasly. We're going to see it just a bit before. So Lee gets the run at Gasly coming out of Stag onto the Jones Straight. And Gasly moves across, defending heavily, and Lee taking a lot of caution going through Brewery. Just be careful of that eel behind him. And this has kind of brought Segenjo into play, as he's now closer to this trio, although that electric eel is a lap adrift with these two. Is Lee going to have a look at Gasly going into the centre F? Gasly trying to defend it. Is Lee going to bomb him? Or Gasly's going to clunk over the curb and spin right in front, and he's out! Oh, dearie me, Pierre Gasly. And that's affected that eel as well. So, both P-bar guns out of the race at the same spot. Oh, goodness me. But that does put Lee up into 4th place. Lucky to avoid that spinning E-bar gum. So here it is up the inside. Exactly the same as Verne and Stroll. And Gasly getting it all wrong. Over the curb, into the wall. And that poor eel taking the damage as well. So, who's going to move up into 8th place then? Well, it's Luca Giotto. Well, it's Segenjo up into 5th. As checkered flag is waving quite early. But there is your race leader coming through the Mistral hairpin. It's Robin Fries that was the eel out of the race. And it is Jean-Eric Verne who takes the victory. That should be his
fantastic drive, great job.
He won in Mexico City earlier on, and there is your 2nd place driver, pole sitter. Lance Stroll lost it on the final lap. He still finishes 2nd. Good points for him and Team Hot Point. And Antonio Felix da Costa coming home in 3rd place. Good drive from 12th on the grid, and Lee similarly strong. There he is in 4th place. A very good race for the Willows team, as this result moves them into the lead of the team's championship on countback. The cars have now been cleared from turn 1, the Senna S. We wait for 5th place. Luca Giotto has taken Segenjo on the final lap. I imagine that was part of the melee. Unless Giotto has had a go at Segenjo going into Duquetteville. It is into Duquetteville. So Luca Giotto brilliantly taking his first points of the season with a 5th place. Where did he start on the grid? He was 8th on the grid. It's been a solid performance all around from the Italian driver. And Segenjo nearly losing out to Sebastian Buemi in the post-off, but I think Segenjo managing to finish in 6th place. Some useful points for him and the Alpine team. Buemi takes 7th, and it looks as if it's going to be the thrust and bust of Brendan Hartley, who is about to finish in 8th place. That's a solid effort from him from 18th on the grid. Brendan Hartley completes the points scorers. And as for the rest of the runners, I think that's Nelsinho Piquet 9th, Nick de Vries 10th, and Benjamin Pryor following the Dutchman home. But there is your race winner, Jean-Eric Verne. And what would that do for the championship? It should still be Cooper Lee leading the Drivers' Championship on 39 points. Nick de Vries not scoring any points at all, and neither did Lucas Di Grassi. So Jean-Eric Verne should be moving up into 2nd, but we'll get that confirmed in due course. There may be some drivers still out there who haven't finished yet, but I think all the field have registered as taking the checkered flag of those who are still running. As we await for the confirmation of the final results. I have to load up the YouTube channel. Still awaiting confirmation, but I think all drivers did make their 2 pit stops. John-Eric Verne, who won ahead of Lance Stroll and Antonio Felix da Costa. Cooper Lee fourth, making it 2 Willows in the top 4. Luca Giotto finishing 5th. And it was Seguenjo 6th ahead of Sebastian Buemi. And 8th place was Brendan Hartley. And John-Eric Verne, the fastest lap of the race, on a 1 minute 23.43. No doubt down to his fresh tyres come the end.